and welcome back to Gapeys garden. We've had a big heat wave come hit us in Washington and Oregon, and we are finally at the close to the end of it. We got up to 106 degrees yesterday, which is a record high of all time for this area. So there was a lot of damage to the gardens. A lot of people lost some livestock to the heat. Luckily, nobody was lost here, and we just had some minimal damage to the garden. So you can see here is my bed of greens. I did put a shade cloth here to try and help with some shade in this area, but it wasn't enough to keep some stuff from bolting. So we do have some bolting lettuce here, and all the spinach was pretty close to bolting already, so it's pretty much finished, and I've been feeding that to the chickens. Our radishes here are also bolting, so those guys need to be pulled. So a lot of this stuff isn't going to waste because the chickens do eat a lot of this stuff, so at least someone can eat it. And then our 3 celeries here probably had one of the most damage. We have some pretty crispy leaves here on some of the ends, so I'll just be pulling those damaged leaves out, and the middle of the celery is still looking pretty good, so it's not a total loss. We got some Japanese, I think it's Japanese radishes over here that aren't, well, it looks like they're just starting to bolt. This one is doing okay still, but we've got, actually this one is already putting out flowers, and these haven't been planted for too long, and they're definitely not ready to harvest. So I'm going to be pulling some of that out. More lettuce that is pretty bolted. So lots of chicken feed in here. We've got our cucumbers all looking pretty good. Peppers are all doing really well. They really like the heat. So that's pretty much all that's in that bed. And then in our in-ground bed here, we've got the potatoes, corn, and a few other things, some broccoli, all looking really good. Not seeing any damage on anything that's in here. We've got our beans, and we've got a couple squashes and flowers in here as well. These are straw flowers that I had left over that I decided to put in here. That should be blooming here in a few weeks. And volunteer California poppies, volunteer potatoes, all looking really good. Now the greenhouse actually got up to 122, I believe, but everything in here is still looking pretty good. I'll do another video later showing the peppers in more detail, but we've got our melons back there really taking off, and our couple tomatoes back here. So everything, despite being 120 degrees in here, I guess there is a little bit of damage on some of the melon leaves, but other than that, I think they'll be okay. Got some more shade cloth here in the garlic bed because I have a couple of lettuces here on the end. I'll just take this off. So those guys they've actually been getting eaten by slugs, so, but this one here is looking really good, not bolted yet. And the garlic is getting ready to almost harvest here pretty soon. I've already harvested all of the garlic scapes off of the hardneck varieties. And then our onions have really been taking off. I did finally get those mulched with some straw, and they are bulking up really nicely. Here we have the tomato bed, and there's no damage at all that I've seen on the tomatoes. They really like the hot weather too. So we've got lots of tomatoes set on most of the varieties. I do have some pruning to do. Some of them are still getting a little, they've got lots of suckers that need to be taken out there so that we have some more airflow and hopefully more productivity. We've got lots of kale here in the kind of around the perimeter of the tomatoes. So we've got, this is the Casper kale variety that I planted. I actually started these from seed back in January, and they're really pretty much full grown and been harvesting off of those. We've got our curly kale here doing really well. And then our marigolds. So nothing in this bed looks like it was damaged at all from the heat. I think the straw mulch has really, really helped a lot. I think these are our biggest tomatoes so far. This is the Defiant variety. And we got a couple of zinnias here. That is my favorite, Queen Lime Orange and Queen Lime Red over here. And what else? We got our figs back here. So I had the figs in front of the greenhouse, and it was just getting way too hot over there because there's not really much shade, and especially those in the black containers. Now these are in green self-watering pots, so these ones didn't do too bad. So I've got these more here in the front. But on the other side of this raspberry patch here, you can see all the rest of the figs are back here. Now these guys are all in black containers, and these get super, super hot when they're in the sun, especially when it's 90+ degrees. So I moved them all back here for a few days so that they can get a little more shade and won't get as hot, because they will burn the roots if those containers get too hot. Got our crabapple tree. So this is a Whitney crabapple, and this variety gets pretty large crabapples, larger than most varieties, and they're actually more sweet than a lot of the other varieties as well. So this is the first year it's really been productive. So it's only about 2 or 3 years old. So we're gonna get a nice harvest off of that this year. And we have our blueberry patch, and I do have the netting down on this because we are starting to get some ripe blueberries, especially the Patriot variety seems to be the one that is producing the earliest. So we've got some nice big blueberries here that are about ready to harvest. So we're keeping an eye on that and keeping them covered so the birds don't get to them. And then we've got a patch of wild strawberries here behind the bees. And the bees, by the way, have been doing really good despite all this heat. We've got a lot of ventilation in the top. This is a ventilation board, so there's a lot of air that can come out there. They've also got upper entrances so they can come out that way and also have some airflow there. So they've been handling it really well. But here is the wild strawberry patch, and it's just growing in wood chips. But it's been surprisingly productive, and we still have quite a few berries to pick in here. I've been coming in here about every day and picking berries. You can see those there. I've also got a lot of bindweed that I've been picking out of here, which is something we have to deal with in our area. It's a constant weed pressure that just never seems to go away, and no one knows how to get rid of it. So just something we have to deal with. We got our plum tree. It doesn't look like the plum tree is going to be very productive this year. I haven't seen all that many plums. There's a few up there. Not sure if you can see those, but it seems like every other year or so we have a good plum year and then a bad one. We've got our leeks here around the Desert King fig, looking really good. There's about 8, I think, leeks around there. And we've got our nice big brabas of Desert King figs there. So this is the only fig I have in ground right now, but I'm going to be adding a couple more. And then this bed here we have our tomatillos, which are just growing like crazy. I've actually trimmed these a few times because they were just getting too big, but they are just loaded with tomatillos in there. So I've got 2 of those. You need at least 2 of those to get fruit, if you didn't know. And then our bees friend, this is the first time I've grown this flower, and I direct seeded it in this area, and this one came up and it just started blooming. So these are supposed to be really good for pollinators and bees, so I wanted to give that one a try. And then we have our zucchini back here, which is loving the heat. We've got a lot of baby zucchinis in there. This is the Goldini variety, and they are just about ready to pick. So I'm keeping an eye on those to make sure that they don't get too big. And then we've got a green Ford Hook variety back here, and I haven't seen any fruit on that one yet. And then we've got, this is our orchard baby corn. So this is a shorter variety, and I'm noticing some tasseling starting already on some of these. So we've got this one here, and I think I saw another one here. So these don't get very tall, and they are really early to harvest. So we'll see how long it takes to get some corn off those. And then I planted a couple of squashes near it. This one is a candy stick delicata, and it's getting a lot taller than I was hoping, so it's starting to shade out the corn a little bit, so I might have to trim that back and redirect some of these branches. This is a brulee butternut. So this one is staying nice and short, nice and compact. It's not damaging the corn at all. So this is definitely one that I'm going to be growing again in the corn patch, because it's a perfect low growing squash. And then our beans, we did have a little bit of damage on some of the leaves. You can see this one is pretty toasty. I haven't decided if I'm going to trim those damaged leaves off or not. I might go in here and do that. This one is pretty damaged too. But really, we haven't really lost anything other than the bolting lettuce. The herbs are looking really good. Sage, thyme, parsley back there. We did get a little bit of burning on some of the parsley tips here, but it should be just fine. So that's pretty much all I wanted to show you. And the chickens are still alive after this heat wave. We did put a couple tarps up here on the chicken run, and that provided some really good shade for them. Let's just take a quick peek here. Everybody's doing really good. We've got some munched on greens that I gave them this morning, some lettuce, there's the spinach. So they've been enjoying that. And they're just hanging out, waiting for it to get hot again. So it's only supposed to get up to about 95 today, so that's a little bit more tolerable than the 3 days of 100+ weather that we were getting. So that's all I wanted to show you for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.